Hello and welcome to tonight's episode of The Perfect Team. We're going to be completing chapter 11. I think this is chapter 12. Chapter 11 or 12, I can't remember. Chapter 11, we're going to be completing chapter 11. Oh, this is really uncomfortable. Okay. My name is Cassandra and I am a psychic telepathic medium and I'm clairvoyant and a bunch of other stuff. But I'm too busy worried about other things to be able to do my actual work. These are special cases and do not reflect upon the system so much as they do upon the actions of a few individuals. The problem is that the U.S. government is not properly constituted to deal with such actions when they are cloaked in heavy security wraps, and the incidence of such happenings is far greater than it need be, since in most cases there should not have been any security over any of the projects. The cost of allowing the secret team to operate in secrecy is high. There are a number of aircraft and have been completely scrubbed of all usual identification, and they are operated by the services for the CIA. For those, somebody from there is here at this time who's evil. For those unfamiliar with the complexities involved in maintaining aircraft, it will be worth a partial explanation to show you what problems arise. The huge radical engines on these large transports are all carefully marked with serial numbers, decals, and other special identifications, which are so coded and cataloged that the men who do the heavy maintenance on them in the major depots of the services can work from drawings and instructions that are in turn coded to match the engine series involved. When engines are made non-attributable for CIA use, all of these markings are removed or changed. This means that only certain crews can work on these engines, and they have to be clear to know why the aircraft are special. Sometimes something will happen to an engine when the plane is far from its regular base. In such instances, a message is sent to the nearest Air Force Base commander, and he's told to fly a maintenance crew there to get the engine and to melt or destroy it, instead of working on the engine and revealing that the plane and its intended mission were classified. A costly engine is destroyed, then the engine must be replaced by another identical non-attributable engine before the plane can continue its flight. Sometimes things will happen to the plane itself. The Air Force had a number of special aircraft in Europe that had been converted to use for certain classified projects. Although from outward appearances they are perfectly normal four-engine transports, one time one of these aircraft had a simple nose wheel problem. It should have been an easy thing to have it worked on at the base and returned to flight operations. However, some of the simpler maintenance work had been turned over to the native teams. One such activity was the repair of those nose wheels. To keep this problem from the natives, a CIA crew chief took a torch and cut several of the main electric cables in the plane, then grounded it for serious maintenance problems. He thought that this would get him to authority to hire an American contract crew that could work on the nose wheel as well as the cables. Since the inspection report showed very severe damage to the plane, the reviewing authority in the United States would not authorize a team to fix the plane and instead ordered it to be salvaged. In the salvaging process, the alert CIA had one of its civilian units bid for the plane, and in a short time it was back in the air in good shape as the property of a civilian airline, which put it to work in its own interest and incidentally for the CIA whenever requested. This could be called an inadvertent windfall, but in any event, it was very costly, and it had been for the security measures that made the whole thing unwieldy. The damage could have been repaired easily, and the Air Force would still be flying that plane. In the late 1950s, the CIA logistics system had all it could handle all over the world. It would deliver such unit shipments as 40,000 arms by airdrop in the period of a few days, or it could send aircraft and helicopters into Laos and move tens of thousands of MEO tribesmen from one part of the country to another with ease. By that time, the CIA had no less than 800 to 1,000 units, all cover units within the DoD. That's the Department of Defense. This was a huge and intricate system. The agency did not man all of the units. Many of them were no more than a telephone number with someone to answer the phone and give information to receive calls. If, for example, a group of military personnel from a foreign country were passing through Washington on their way home after a school on a military aid program quota, and they had been told to get in touch with a certain contact, they could call a number in Washington and their contact would answer the phone and tell them where to meet him, where they were to stay, and so on. If a defector had been flown to the United States, was living in some safe house, and was not permitted to leave unless he was escorted for his own safety, he would call a certain number in Washington and ask for a certain military officer who would give him instructions of one kind or another. Some of these phone drop organizations were used for nothing more than a requisition supplies from another service. The supplying services would never know that the requisitioning outfit did not really exist. Of course, the agency would go through the details of making certain that the units it was using were listed in the supply catalogs on the regular military postal catalogs and in other normal references. Other units were manned with many people and served as active training units, storage sites, or operational facilities of one kind or another. In such cases, the manning would be either all agency in the cover of military, or agency and military blended together, or it might be all military supporting the agency. In the latter case, the unit might be an Air Force squadron that had aircraft and other equipment maintained in readiness, complete with a well-trained crews ready to fly out of the agency or any of a great number of special missions. Everything possible would be done to make it appear to be a real Air Force unit. Few people, even among those who had supposed to know all that the agency's relationship with the DoD, have ever known exactly how many units exist. And what is more important, that these units really do. One day back in 1960 or 1961, it was necessary for me to brief the chairman of the JCS on a matter that had come up involving the CIA and the military. Such briefings, when they have been put on the regular agenda of the day, take place in a sort of reverse pecking order. Each time that comes before the chiefs is briefed, but its staff supporting office from the least sensitive to the most highly classified. On this day were a number of briefings on all sorts of subjects. The room where the chiefs met was full, and the anterooms were packed with briefing teams. One by one, the teams were called to give their briefings. As they finished, they would be dismissed, and if the chief of any given service had any of his top-level staff there with him, he might dismiss the officer along with the briefers. Sometimes when one service is briefing, a chief of another service will want to have one or more of his senior assistants there to hear the briefing with him. As a result, as the briefings progress from least classified to most highly classified, the whole group begins to thin out. This is done with a very precise control verging on the ritualistic. Finally, the briefings on atomic energy matters, missiles in space, and other highly classified matters took place. Then the chiefs began to hear some of the more closely held intelligence matters. The last item was the one that pertained to the CIA operational information. As I was ushered into the room, I noted that everyone was leaving except the chairman and the commandant of the Marine Corps. The chairman was General Lyman L. Lemitzer, and the commandant was General David Shoup. They were close friends, and I had known each other for years. When the primary subject of the briefing had ended, General Lemitzer asked me about the Army cover unit that was involved in the operation. I explained that its role was, and more or less added that this was a rather routine matter. Then he said, "Prouty, if this is a routine, yet General Shoup and I have never heard of it before, can you tell me in round numbers how many Army units there are that exist as cover for the CIA?" I replied that to my knowledge at that time there were 605 such units. And that was back in the whatever. Some real, some mixed, and some were simply telephone drops. When he heard that, he turned to the General Shoup and said, I realize that we provided cover for the agency from time to time, but I never knew that we had anywhere near so many permanent cover units and that they all existed all over the world. I then asked General Lemitzer if I might ask him a question. He said, "I could, General." I said, "During all of my military career, I've done one thing or another in the direction of a senior officer. In all those years and in all those circumstances, I've always believed that someone either at that level of the officer who told me to do what I was doing or further up on the chain of command knew why I was doing what I had been directed to do, and that he knew what the reason for doing it was. Now I am speaking to the senior military officer in the armed forces, and I've just found out that some things I've been doing for years in support of the CIA have not been known, and that they have been done most likely in response to other authority. Is this correct?" This stated a friendly, informal, and most enlightening conversation, more or less to the effect that where the CIA was concerned, there were a lot of things no one seemed to know. It ended with those agendas, those two generals asking me about matters they had unwittingly participated in during years that they had never been told about. It was amazing, very basic and very true, that a great number of operations, some of them quite important in terms of a foreign policy and usually involving war or more foreign nations, had taken place in the guise of military activities when in reality they were not. Since the military had been used for support purposes, first in the context of war planning and later for more open and more active roles as the CIA and the ST became more powerful and bold, the military had continued to believe that whatever it had been asked to do must have been sanctioned from above by someone. This brings us back to the Dulles-Jackson-Correa report. One of the major undertakings of the report was to place the CIA quietly within the structure of the U.S. government, ostensibly to obtain more complete secrecy and when necessary. For example, it was necessary for the CIA to arrange for aircraft to enter the country quite frequently without the usual customs check that all military aircraft must undergo. In the early years, the CIA would arrange directly or through state or defense to have customs waive inspection of a plane with classified cargo or carrying a defector or on some other highly classified mission. Then, when such things had become more or less commonplace, the CIA would politely offer to provide a few men to work with a regular customs personnel to take the burden from such activity from them. This is the way it was put in the first place, and the customs office would gratefully accept the assistance. The CIA would go through all the necessary steps to get authorization for increasing the manpower allocations in the customs service by the number of men it planned to put there, and then to make arrangements to reimburse the customs office for the payroll and other costs of the office. This latter step would always be taken because it would be best for the customs office to go through all of the normal motions of paying these men, including promoting them and paying for their travel and other usual expenses, so that their assignment would appear to be completely normal to all others in the office. Then by special accounting procedures that would take place in the main office in CIA would reimburse the Treasury Department for the money involved. In the beginning, this would all be done with elaborate open-handedness, even to the point where the new agency would receive training and other prerequisites of the job. However, as the years passed, most of these procedures would be forgotten, and few would recall that those special assignments had even originated with the agency. Accountants who had known how to transfer the funds would have been transferred themselves, and the Treasury Department might no longer bill for the costs involved, but the agency men would stay on. Their replacements would be carefully fitted into the manning tables, and few would even notice that they were there. This has happened quite extensively in a great many places all throughout the government. There are CIA men in the Federal Aviation Administration and state all over DoD and in most other offices where the CIA has wanted to place them. Few top officials, if any, would ever deny the agency such a service, and as the appointed official departed and his staffs came and went, the whole device would be lost with only the CIA remembering that they were still there. Many of these people have reached positions of great responsibility. I believe that the most powerful and certainly the most useful agent in the CIA has ever had operates in such a capacity within another branch of the government, and he has been there far so long, and few have any idea that he is a long-term career agent of the CIA. Through his most excellent and skillful services, more CIA operations have been able to take place than can be laid at the feet of any other more legitimate agent. This was the plan and the wisdom of the Dulles idea from the beginning. On the basis of security, he would place people in all the areas of the government, and then he would move them up and deeper into their cover jobs until they began to take a very active part in the role of their own cover organizations. This is how the ST was born. Today, the role of the CIA is performed by an ad hoc organization that is much greater in size, strength, and resources than the CIA has ever visualized to be. There's another facet to this type of organization that has had a government major impact upon the role of the secret operations of this government. With the spread of influence of the CIA into so many other branches of the federal government, the agencies found it very easy to make friends and win willing disciples in their new surroundings. There is a glamour and allure to the fun and games of agency work that appeals to many, and they go out of their way to provide support and above and beyond what the CIA has ever asked for or thought to ask for. As a case in point, consider the U-2 project. The Lockheed company came up with a plane, but the Air Force knew it could not use it in peacetime and thought it might be able to get it into use by offering it to the CIA. The CIA picked up the idea and operated the whole project, provided this was a major provided that the Air Force paid for it and actually supported it with men, material, and facilities. A proposal that began as a plan to get the aircraft on a production line for Air Force Renaissance purpose. This became a project to get the plane flying for CIA photographic intelligence purposes. As the photographs began to come in, the input data from them began to dictate new operations that arose not from some foreign policy or national planning staff, but the intelligence sources. Intelligence input began a cycle that supported intelligence itself, and a new machine which required more and more support of its own actions was born within the government. By the time of the Bay of Pigs operations, the CIA was part of a greater team which used the agency and other parts of the government to carry out almost any secret operation it wanted. By the time this organization had the equipment, the facilities, the men, the funds to carry out clandestine operations that were so vast that even on the basis of simple definition, they were no longer truly secret, nor could anyone hope that they might be. The availability of supplies and facilities made it possible for all of this to come about. The growth of the CIA, of the greater ST, has resulted more from a huge success of the DDS side of the agency than from the DDP or the DDI. When Allen Dulles had abolished the DDA, the administration, he had put nearly everything that was not intelligent and that was not secret operations into the DDS division. The DDS became responsible for the function of budget, the comptrollership for personnel, and for the special personal function that is the most important in the agency personnel cover for communications, for research and development, including the very special agency shop that is responsible for the development of all the very special gadgets and other special devices so important to the trade of intelligence. For transportation, for facilities, a special resource so vast that few people even know 50% of what exists for supply and maintenance. It's not just about war either. This is about fueling your energy in feelings. Meaning they're trying to make you feel bad. That's the purpose of the CIA. Your own government is attempting to make people feel like they are not enough, they are pieces of crap, so they can be better than. That's a societal downfall. This is a huge deal, folks. I love myself. No, actually, you don't love yourself. That's why you have a codependent relationship with the person sitting next to you. That's why you're an alcoholic. That's why you can't keep a job. That's why your money is almost gone. That's why you're completely depressed and miserable because of the CIA, because of the Vandy clan, because of the Democratic Party, because of Black Lives Matter. Many of these functions, which are normal to any major enterprise, take on special meaning in the CIA. In fact, every one of these general headings were buried somewhere deep in its staff special arrangements that make the agency what it is. Research and development is the most interesting enterprise as carried on by the CIA. For example, let us say that the toilet paper project is a CIA project. Let us say, for example, that the CIA has a modified aircraft that it flies along the border on the Iron Curtain, or for the matter, anywhere it wants to listen to electronic traffic. This monitoring airborne system is as sophisticated as the military can make it, and in many instances, the CIA has been able to have even the newest military system modified to give it some special characteristics of particular use of the agency. In the normal pursuit of its mission, the plane cruises at altitude on a prearranged course and listens to everything that it hears on all waveboards. Oh, that sounds a little like our Alexa. After the flight, the plane lands at its Air Force home base, and tapes it made during flight are immediately taken from the racks on the plane, sealed in shipping containers, and put in the first jet to Washington. Within 24 hours, these tapes are processed in a special readout lab that might involve computerized readout as well as human listening. As a result of this process, there might be found a certain signal that appeared as perhaps no more than a bit of static on some normal appearing carrier wave. More detailed study of these signal reveals that it is unlike the usual static, that there is a chance that the split-second blip is something special, but there is no known system for interpreting such a signal. Some examples is you could literally put that Balenciaga, the fashion, in a subliminal message across social media in an underlining tone on television, and you could say, we want to cancel culture Balenciaga, or whatever your name is. And then all of a sudden, everybody is up to not liking their brand. However, yesterday you loved everything about them. And then they've hired people to do, this is what they did. They told them that they were going to do this specific runway show. And then they did this specific layout show of children, which was weird anyway. It was like, whatever, who cares? And then it's not even that big of a deal. It's not even BDSM. It's like a little garbage pail kid. That's what it reminds me of, a garbage pail kid. And then they planted paperwork on the desk, took some picture of somebody's desk paperwork, and then hired these CIA wannabes who were social media influencers to turn you against the fashion designer company and make them look like villains, including Kim Kardashian, as if she's somebody to listen to. So why do we care about what Kim Kardashian has to say about it? She's a terrible mother. Why do we care what she has to say? Because they're telling us that we care what she has to say. However, nobody gives a shit what Kim Kardashian and her fat ass has to say, you piece of shit. You nasty. She's disgusting. Look at her face. Imagine lying next to that at night and trying to be romantic with that. Trying to have a logical conversation with that. And all she does is try to mind manipulate you into something. What kind of relationship is that? Pathetic. Not to mention the lives that she's destroyed, including Ray J and what's your name? Chris, and all the other people, including her own mother. More detailed study of this signal reveals that it is unlike the usual static, that there is a chance that this split-second blip is something special, but there is no known system for interpreting such a signal. A review of other tapes made in the same area might reveal that similar blips have been occurring on some of them. The CIA takes this up with the Air Force experts who designed the system, and through which then learns the equipment that was designed by a certain team working for a well-known manufacturer or electronic equipment. Evolution of their work with the internet, because the internet wasn't around back then. The Air Force, of course, has a contract with the manufacturer. The CIA goes to the manufacturer under the guise of the Air Force and asks what might be done to identify and, if possible, to read out the blips. They've also created mass hysteria around sexual activity, meaning they're literally destroying relationships of a man and a woman. Kardashians love that. So now they're portraying attractive women as lesbians. They're portraying relationships as Gary Vaynerchuk and Monavand. Like that's supposed to be a normal relationship. They're trying to paint the picture for you to be heartless, hopeless, and sex maniacs. To live horrible lives to produce income. Meaning no sense of morality or integrity exists, and everybody's just on board with it because now we've got a new generation like Mr. Beast's crew who don't give a shit about nothing. And then that's what the youngest generation is going to come into. However, the younger generation, they have heart. And so what'll happen instead is that they will abuse this younger generation, and then the millennial generation stands on their little thrones because they look like plastic dolls. And the men that are brainwashed by them. What a lovely Democratic Party that is, isn't it? Because they're the ones that have been doing this because Obama is the one who was in office for 8 years. The manufacturer agrees to take on a problem as it overrun to the original development and contract with the Air Force. The agency people known to the manufacturer only as Air Force people agree. In due course, the manufacturer finds a scientist at Stanford who has experimented with a remarkable tube that seemed to promise some solutions to the problems involved. A subcontract is left and further work is done on the tube. Finally, the manufacturer is able to demonstrate a receiver that is able to find these blips, which are usually hidden at all wave channels, to get them recorded on tape. They are now able to get this equipment to stretch those blips to the right length in terms of sound waves, and before long, these blips are shown to contain decipherable data. I literally told you before I read it. Now the developmental contract is terminated and the receivers are put into production. Also on the Air Force contract, as things turned out, the Air Force is able to get to use some of these fabulous sets itself, and it increases the production order. By this time, a small development project to which all this stuff about Black Lives Matter is a freaking lie. You do get that, right? Literally blips of sound waves broadcasted made you to believe that you are not enough to get them where they need to go and rise in power, to where they would turn the signal off and then you'd be left depleted. And I'm going to murder Erling Griffin. She's going to be hanged. By this time, a small development project to which the CIA had agreed to contribute about $60,000 had grown into a total development project of more than $1 million with a long manufacturing procedure, like taking all our teeth out without anesthesia. Procurement contract on top of that. The important thing in situations like this is that through this method, even when it is used honestly and properly, the services can pay out millions for the agency without realizing it. Most of the Air Force intelligence electronics technicians involved in this case, which through hypothetical has its basis in fact, were also procurement experts and no experience in the intricacies of such financial matters. As a result, they were along thinking someone else was taking care of the money. The agency went along protesting that if someone sent them the bill, they would pay it. Some of those people have big bills now. The bills were rarely, if ever, sent. Such actions soon became known, and others who want work done for other reasons find the way to use this same technique to approve a new gun that had to be been shown for a manufacturer found that a fellow officer on a classified project was interested in it. So then they took all these ghetto-ass white and black people and had private little millennial meetings where they taught people how to utilize some of the CIA work against boomer generations who are grounded in the lifestyles, and my generation who were fragmented from the ignorant fuck faces. I am so fucking disappointed in my age group who would ever fucking consider to date any trash motherfucking heap like that. Anyone under the age of 40, I am so fucking disgusted by you. Fucking pathetic. Fucking pathetic. They demonstrated the new gun to a group, much as if it were a real army demonstration. The manufacturer, willing to do anything to sell this new weapon, participated fully in these demonstrations and tests. He may have thought it would be odd, and I want to know why Hugh Hefner is back out on the fucking news, dude. That means, Dan, you better watch your fucking ass. Because now they're trying to villainize Hugh Hefner when those hoe bitches were all up on that shit. That was a good man who literally just used what he was offered. He was nice to those fucking sluts for some reason. And he was able to tolerate their foolishness. Fucking fat, those two fat twins. Fucking nasty, man. Look at your fucking asses. Hugh Hefner was attractive till the day he fucking died. Fucking little girls on the television show trying to get their jump offs. And then you had the nerve to write a book about it. How there was dog shit all over the house. So instead of doing the work to clean up your own fucking house, you reported on yourself and said what a lazy ass bitch you are. Just like the little slut who leaned in the dryer and then paid the guy to come grab her ass. That's what we're dealing with these sluts. And then you gentlemen literally defend them as if they're innocent. I'm going to tell you right now, those hoe bitches ain't fucking innocent. We got women literally having sex with men, calling the exes on the phone while they're fucking. And y'all don't say nothing. Y'all got men recording yourselves having sex with their exes while you're dating another slut. And then you let the lady see the freaking video. Oops. He may have thought it odd that the tests had been scheduled in the Army Chemical Warfare Station at Fort Detrick instead of at the Aberdeen Proving Ground where most tests are usually held, but he was selling, not asking questions so eagerly, Gary went along with this whole thing to fucking attempt to humiliate me in ways I've already been humiliated. Literally falling in love on camera and then showing everyone all over the internet how newly he is in love with some nasty Iranian bitch. Who then terrorizes and demonizes not only the female community, but also the male community. Meanwhile, she is flirting with any good-looking man that comes along, seductively seducing them, and attempting to break up every relationship that she comes into contact with, not to mention killing anyone in her way. Travels all over the fucking globe with her, looking all fucking hot and sexy, or at least that is what he thinks. I hope you have a fucking blast in Miami, you fucking prick. And you want to know why we're at fucking war. After the tests at Detrick, there were meetings in a special section of the Office of Secretary of Defense, located near the Office of the Deputy Director for Research and Engineering. The DDR&E representative was a prominent career civilian who had recently been made head of the office for a long tour of duty in the Office of Special Operations, where CIA matters were usually processed. In other words, this man was less an engineer than a special operations man, and he was less an Army or military counterpart than he was an agency collaborator. At this meeting, there was many Army officers and there were Air Force officers. There may have been Marine and Navy officers, and there were many civilians. And the manufacturers' representatives could not be faulted if they believed that they were selling their weapon to a most highly qualified group. In fact, the main sponsor to the weapon, an Army lieutenant colonel in uniform, gave all appearances of being the Army representative, which he was not. The meeting ended with a consensus that the gun should be purchased in trial numbers by the Air Force for the security reasons for use by the Air Force Air Police units. Later, the Air Force did purchase tens of thousands of the new weapons, and they disappeared into the security-covered inventory of the CIA. This is a part of a story of the M16 rifle of questionable repute in the Vietnam operations. With the passage of time, the agency had become more adept at getting any supplies and support it needs, and in getting them supported, stored, and transported. The story of the agency transported capability will be told later. All military equipment is controlled by an elaborate supply system, and the funds that are required to develop, procure, and maintain this vast store of equipment all over the world are detailed in the budget. Anyone can easily make a case for occasional errors in such a vast system. There have been those who, about the budget time every year, show how the Air Force has purchased .15 nuts and bolts are $28 each. How the Navy has procured 5,400,000 shrimp forks, and how the Army has been. You gotta be fucking kidding me. You know that 5,400,000 shrimp forks is actually a lie, right? He put this in the book to tell you that that's what they procured, as if they spent the money on that, but that was a spot to let you know that they didn't spend that on that. They probably pocketed our money while Skid Row homeless people who used to pay taxes are now fucking sleeping on the street, so Obama can buy a house in the Hamptons while Gary Vaynerchuk and Mona Coke Nose Butt go in there and go to the white party to look cool. And then prance around, oh my God, like, I'm so wealthy. I'm so wealthy. Oh, Gary, let's go. I'm so wealthy. I'm so wealthy, Gary. Oh, yes. Yeah, let's go have sex. Real intelligent. In spite of all of this, the logistics services of the military establishment do an amazing job, and no military services in the world have ever had the support that they have provided. It is within this fabulous system that the CIA logistics experts, most of whom are retired military personnel themselves, have learned to create miracles. There is on the books of Congress, the law of this country, an old bit of legislation called you might as well just throw all the fucking laws out. They're a fucking waste of space. None of it fucking works. Y'all are dumb as fuck. It's all in particular. There's millions or thousands of black men in jail for defending themselves, who have like no opportunity to get out. And that's from who? Obama. That new bitch you just put on the Supreme Court is also one of them. All fueling public fucking agenda, instead of looking at a human being as a human being and taking a look at the real fucking truth and keeping the real fucking criminals in fucking jail. Because you just let a bunch of them out with COVID-19. It remains in force as amended, the Economy Act of 1932. In theory, it is a simple and important. But then we've got Kim Kardashian, you know. She's such a lawyer, and she's so helpful to who? To her career, as she pretends to assist people who are in jail. Just to get enough publicity to bring a homeless man into her house to humiliate him and then send him on his way to get the fuck out because she got what she needed. And then everybody just sits there and says nothing. And I'm talking about you fucking Hollywood motherfuckers. During the early years of the Depression, it was found that a considerable amount of money could be saved if the Congress would permit the various departments and agencies of the government to trade among themselves when one had a surplus that the other wanted. It used to be that each department had to keep rigid accounting of what it had and that it was not transferred to another department. There's even a law for that. Are you fucking kidding me? The Economy Act, so they don't even like do yard sale shit. It's like, no, we'll just spend an additional $1 million because you're government, and then this select group of corporation will earn extra money. Just make sure you have your dots and your T's crossed. And then you'll definitely get the money, and then it's all in who you know and what you stand for, which it better be what we told you to. Okay, I'll do it. As long as I get paid. The economy, and then you go around, this is the funny part about it, y'all. And then they walk around as if they're sophisticated. And then they walk around as if they're assisting people. I'm such a helper. I'm so helpful. I'm literally putting money in my pocket. And I don't give a shit about you, but I'm pretending like I'm giving a shit about you. It's all right, honey. The Economy Act, among other things, permit one department, say agriculture, to let the Army, for example, buy desks that it may have in excess for a price to be agreed upon by both departments. This law has worked well, and it has permitted savings among all parts of the government. Early in its history, the CIA looked at this law and found that it could be used for some interesting purposes. The CIA might like to purchase some equipment that it could not afford, or make more likely that it did not want anyone in the government to know it had acquired. It would have one of these people most likely covered in some other department. Yeah, I'm sure I'm covered, considering you said that last year when I didn't have a job, nor did I have any money, and I'm still fucking sitting here wondering where my fucking paycheck is, you fucking prick. And yeah, you're gonna go ahead and sit over there with your sorry ass and go, be kind. You need to take a long, hard look in your fucking mirror to take a look and see who is not. Be kind. I don't give a fuck what you got going on over there. Nor do I give a fuck about this fucking government system. Nor do I give a fuck about any of this other fucking shit. Because you sure as fuck don't give a fuck about anybody else but your fucking selves. It would have one of its people most likely covered in some other department, meet with the owning department and sound it out about the purchase. In accordance with the provisions of the Economy Act of 1932 as amended, usually the agency would know beforehand that the equipment was available and the selling department would particularly give it away. The agency would then conclude the action and buy this material with funds of the department under whose cover it had entered into the agreement. In certain cases, the buying department would require the agency to reimburse it for the cost of the transaction, but increasingly, this became a doubtful process. At other times, the CIA would approach another department through a cover cut out to an office where it also had another cover arrangement. These offices bickering about which with each other as separate departments would arrive at an agreement that they would actually staff through the sections to make it appear to be scrupulously legal and authentic, and then the CIA would end up with what it wanted without the expenditure of any funds. Even the retelling of some of these arrangements sounds ridiculous, and the reader may be excused from wanting to believe that this could not have happened. A cover cutout is some device or process that has been set up to circumvent or otherwise bypass normal procedures so that the connection with the CIA cannot be discovered in the normal course of business. Oh, shocker there. Not only have these things like this have happened, but they are even more pretentious. The agency will go to any ends when it has convinced itself that it is doing so on the grounds of security. The agency, at the constant reminder and conditioning of Allen Dulles, always believed that anything it did was all right as long as they were carrying out the will of Congress to protect its secret sources and methods. That sounds a little dictatorship to me. We don't live in a democracy, you fools. After decades of logistic endeavors of all kinds and all types, the agency has required more than enough in hardware and facilities. I don't even believe none of you motherfuckers are good people. None of you are motherfucking good people, because if you literally could let me sit here for 5 years and watch all my fucking shit with cameras all over my fucking house, then you're the fucking problem, and you have no soul, and you have no heart, and you don't give a fuck about nobody. And you go ahead and fucking put this shit on TMZ and any other piece of shit show you got out there, and you better fucking believe I will have a response for that motherfucking piece of shit who's the one that is reporting that shit. Fucking robots. I'm a news reporter. How can you even fucking live with yourselves? I got children, and I'm gonna go on a reality television show and be the mediator between all these fucking sluts. known as the Vandy Clan moms, looking like whores. After decades of logistical endeavors of all kinds and all types, the agency has acquired more than enough in hardware and facilities and transport and warehousing to perform all the peacetime operations it could ever dream of. And if it could come up with a especially large project, it would easily supply itself, it's okay, Hazel, from within the hordes of other departments and agencies. To the department cost is no hordes of other departments and agencies. To the agency cost is no barrier. When things can be delivered by air, they are delivered by air regardless of cost differential. When equipment can be obtained new, it is purchased new rather than surplus. When new is available, it is not so much that the agency was always that way, but it became spoiled because since Louis Johnson's time, just before the Korean War, there was not a Secretary of Defense who really was concerned himself with the cost of supporting the CIA. There was not been a secretary who knew enough about the CIA was really doing to believe that the volume of material warranted concern over the cost. And don't you think that Scientology, that they didn't bring CIA agents into Scientology? Your own people in there, some of those fuckers are CIA. And they ain't Scientologists. So the agency found its pipe attachment to the boundless sea, and it learned to make the most of it, just letting it flow in. The same can be said to the Congress. There are no members of the House of Senate who have ever contemplated in anywhere near exact amounts the great volume of men, money, and material of the agency, and has been able to acquire and to expand without observation by these normally charged with their responsibility. The agency accuses its own actions on the basis that it employs these methods secretly for the good of the country. Thus, it does not have to expose its sources and methods as it requests men, money, and supplies in the usual manner. Once the agency has become accustomed to this form of rationalization, there are no limits to what it and its peripheral operations will be perfectly willing to do for the good of the country and for the cause always unquestioned of anti-communism. You lying sacks of fucking shit. I cannot believe this shit, man. Let's even like looking at that fucking slut Dua Lipa. Oh, my name is Dua Lipa. No laws, no rules. Then she dates Trevor, allegedly goes on a date with Trevor Noah, and then all of a sudden now she's all over the internet again, and then she's getting citizenship in Albania. What a piece of fucking trash. And no one says anything but says, oh, Dua, that is so exciting. Oh my gosh. As she tells a fan as they're asking for an autograph, I don't do that when my family's around. Your performances suck. Put some fucking clothes on. Take a look at Taylor Swift and take some fucking lessons. Your music sucks. You're a terrible dancer. You're a horrible performer. And you're ugly as shit. And that goes for each and every one of you in that generation. Not to mention you fake fucking actresses who don't know how to fucking act. You literally hire 25-year-olds now to play the mother role to another 25-year-old. And as they're performing on screen, the attempt at the babysitter to the son who's used to be the baby, who's dating the daughter of the woman he's telling you your daughter exists. One, she doesn't give a shit, although she's acting as if she does. And two, on screen, she's attempting to seduce the other actor in the scene when she's supposed to be playing the mother. And the same thing goes for Jennifer Garner in the movie called The Adam Project, where they're sitting at a bar and she's trying to seduce Ryan Reynolds in the scene when she's the mother from the past. Talk about some brainwashed freaking pussy chasing sluts. You have no professionalism. You're terrible singers, you're terrible actors, and all you fucking do is judge everybody else. As you literally sit there and act as if you're good people trying to help the world. No, thank you. We do not want your help. You are the reason that we are in this fucking mess, as you literally stare at my neck and tell me that I'm old because of the lighting. When it's not my neck you need to take a look at. It's your own fucking gobble neck, bitch. You need to take a look in the mirror and focus on the real problem in this fucking world, and that would be you, because it sure as fuck ain't me.